Why not?
You guys believe 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang where nothing exploded and produced everything. 4.6 billion years ago the Earth cooled down, made a hard rocky crust. It rained on the rocks for millions of years, turned them into soup, and the soup came alive 3 billion years ago. Found somebody to marry, and something to eat, of course, and slowly evolved into everything we see today. There are some lies in our science books.
This standard model is simultaneously the coolest thing in the world and the most bigger too. So now I work on the ATLAS experiment, as Simon mentioned. ATLAS is one of the two big experiments at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. And so this is actually, I'll show another photo of it later, but it's basically a 6 stories high and 40 meters long. And it's a place where we collect debris from proton collisions. And for those of you, just to remind you of what the LHC is, it kind of looks like this. If you're in the tunnel, it looks more or less like this. And the LHC is a 27-kilometer circular tunnel on the border of France and Switzerland, buried 100 meters underground. And this is what it would look like if it were around London. And I was just told, in fact, that the 27 kilometers more or less is the, what is it, the central line or something like that, or the yellow line? The circle line, yeah. So basically, it's like the circle line, but put that in the border of France and Switzerland. Yeah. So this is, I like this because you could get from Mayfair all the way up to Stoke Newington really quickly. It looks, yeah. So it's a 27-kilometer circular tunnel on the border of France and Switzerland, buried 100 meters underground. And in this tunnel, we use superconducting magnets that are colder than outer space to accelerate protons to almost the speed of light. So you're going to be a proton here in a second. If you follow this animation, great, you're a proton. And now you can pick which one of the quarks you are. Are you red or you blue? And eventually, we accelerate these almost the speed of light, and then we slam them into each other millions of times a second. And we collect the debris of these collisions to look for new, undiscovered fundamental particles. Its design and construction took decades of work by thousands of people from around the world. And so that's what it looks like when a particle collision happens. I'll let this animation finish here. But then the place where the particle collision happens, you better put a gigantic detector because quantum field theory magic is going to happen. And so by big, I mean this. This is ATLAS. This is hopefully a photo you've seen before. 6 stories high, 40 meters long. There's some lucky guy that got to stand there, right as they were bringing the electromagnetic calorimeter in. Hopefully he wasn't standing there when they brought it all the way in. It would be a very sad story. But these are the types of experiments that I have to use, that I use now to try to answer these much bigger questions. Excuse me. And we're going to go a little bit into the details of what we're actually doing with these types of with these experiments, and why we need to go to bigger colliders, and why we've always had to do this in the past. And if this sounds complicated, we have to go to such gigantically high energies, bigger experiments and things like that to look for these particles that may explain these things. Why can't we do something lower energy? It's primarily because the universe as it stands right now is really, really boring. And it's really, really cold. So this is the history of the universe going backwards. And this is actually the current slice of the universe right now. If you take the average temperature of the universe just right now, stick a thermometer out in outer space, it's going to be very low. The average temperature of the universe is extremely low right now. And so this is today, 14 billion years after the moment of the Big Bang. This must be the 1950s, because that's a nuclear family there. Oh, I'm using the laser pointer. This must be the 1950s, because that's a nuclear family there. But if you then just logically, and we know that when you look out in space, you see all the stars and the galaxies moving far apart from each other, farther and farther away. So if you just run time backwards, at some point they all had to be packed down into some tiny, hot, dense, insanely energetic point. And so that's, of course, you go back, run the clock backwards, and eventually get back to the moment of the Big Bang. And that's the highest energy ever. And so what we're doing when we go to high energies is that we're at this collider experiments. So we take these protons, in this 27-kilometer tunnel, we accelerate them almost at the speed of light, faster and faster and faster, higher and higher energies. That gets us up to a moment of the universe's history when the average energy was really, really high. And this was the point at which some of these particles we're looking for that could help explain these open questions may have existed in abundance. And that's why they don't exist now, because they died out, and then the universe expanded too much, and that wasn't important for them to stay stable anymore. And so we have to briefly recreate the conditions of the universe as they were a fraction of a second after the Big Bang. And the Large Hadron Collider gets us up to about right here. So what we do is we go back in time. We can get back to the 2 minutes and 1 second, and eventually go. We're not satisfied with just a fraction of a second after the Big Bang. We want to know what happened a fraction of a second after the Big Bang. So this is all that we're doing in particle physics, and the Large Hadron Collider gets us to that point. But as I said, the standard model is incomplete. We know there have to be other things out there, and I'm going to mention, some of the ones that I mentioned on that introductory slide. But so we can get back to a very, very short time period just after the Big Bang, but we want to go back farther because that's where the discovery could be.
A billion years ago, what exploded? This is what the textbooks teach.
Before the Big Bang, there was nothing, literally nothing, an infinitesimal nugget of space. And then something happened, triggering the most colossal explosion in history.
Yes, boys and girls, you see, nothing exploded, and here we are. So I asked this professor if I could ask him some questions about the Big Bang. I said, where did all this matter come from? He said, well, we don't know that for sure. I said, well, sir, would you please tell me where the laws came from? The universe is run by laws, gravity, centrifugal force, inertia. Who gave the laws? He said, we don't know that either. I said, sir, could you tell me where the energy came from? You know, it takes energy to make a Big Bang. Who bought the gas to run this machine anyway? He said, we don't know that either. I said,
But, I mean, part of you should actually still be saying, I totally don't understand what you're talking about. You're just saying that we're make particles. I mean, what does it mean when you collide two protons together? Is there, and you're looking for dark matter, or you're looking for a Higgs boson? I mean, was the Higgs boson like hidden inside the proton? Are you filled with Higgs bosons right now? You're not. There are no Higgs bosons in this room right now. So where are we getting these from? How well motivated anymore? So the next generation and the next generation of particle physics colliders have to go big. We have to cast a wide net, and we have to do it in some way so that we can split the difference between something that is possible within a reasonable amount of time, within reasonable budgets, things like this, and something that would really get us to large enough energy to be able to answer the questions definitively. Because the thing, just to use one example, that supersymmetry thing, it doesn't have to be within 13 TeV. It's always there's always a bit of a rough, there's always a little bit of wiggle room with the supersymmetry thing. You'll talk to the theorists and oh yeah, it's definitely going to be here. Oh, it's definitely going to be here. Oh, it's definitely going to be here. It's an amorphous beast. But it should be within the range of the TeV range. But to answer the TeV range definitively, we should go really high. Let's go above the TeV range, and then that would answer the question completely. So the next generation of particle physics colliders are going to be something like the CEPC that might be 50 to 70 kilometers around in China, and maybe this would get us to the discovery, just right around the corner. And the next, another one that's being discussed right now is the Future Circular Collider, about 100 kilometers around at CERN, and both of these will maybe start taking data in the 2040s. But once again, the discovery, there's no guarantee that it's going to be right around the corner. It could be anywhere in this range. So, to really answer the question definitively, we should go big. We should build a collider around the circumference of a great circle of the moon. And this would be 11,000 kilometers around, and it would look something like this. This is an artist's rendition. And it would get us up to a high enough range in energy that would more or less be able to definitively answer the question, is supersymmetry right around the corner, or is it very unnatural? And once again, this natural thing in terms of physics, it's a little bit hard to motivate these days because naturalness as a concept is, my colleague, one of my colleagues often says, simplicity is not a principle of nature. At the end of the day, you actually, because our world is actually not so simple in certain ways. I mean, it's very Baroque. If you were some deity designer in the universe, you would totally not design this one. It's really bizarre. The standard model is nice, but it fits together in really strange ways, and there's different values of things that are chosen. You wouldn't design this at all. And so this kind of naturalness argument is kind of going out the window. But getting up to tens of thousands of TeV would really allow us to completely definitively answer this question with respect to, is supersymmetry a natural symmetry of nature? And it would more or less make us it would spur us to think in completely new ways about how to answer this biggest open question, because we're kind of running out of ideas. We're kind of running out of ways, We're
going to cover some of that tonight. I'm not against science, I'm not against schools, I'm not against teachers, because most of them don't know what they believe. You have to tell them. I was hoping he was going to ask that. I said, okay, now sir, hold it. If I told you that I believe God created the heaven and the earth like the Bible teaches, you're going to say, and where did God come from? And I don't know. But you said, well, we don't know that for sure. We don't know that either. Don't tell me my theory is religious and yours is science. Oh, no, sir, they're both religious. Evolution is a religion. You have to believe. So I asked the professor, where did the matter come from? He said, I don't know. So basically, I believe in the beginning God, and you believe in the beginning dirt.